so exciting because this is a powerhouse of a woman. Now, Khanyi Mlambo-Chaba is an accomplished businesswoman with a powerful voice. But what's crazy about her is her lungs. She has completed the world's top 7 marathons and climbed many mountains. A conversation for another day that must be had. Now, in her distinguished career, she has championed business to purposefully and ethically pursue sustainable growth and investment, and that has a meaningful impact on customers, society, and the environment, and delivers on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are so looking forward to this. Khanyi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Relebogile. I hope you can hear the sound perfectly and see my face.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Sisi. Thank you for this opportunity, to you first and to Albertus. You guys have been wonderful since yesterday and today in terms of how you have been running the program. Thank you to the climate360 team, particularly a Team Europe for South Africa. This is a great platform for some of us to actually use our voices in terms of what do we believe can still be done as far as climate change is concerned. And of course, to the Flow communication team, some of us would not be here if we did not have friends in the high places. So thank you so much, Tara and team, for inviting me for this opportunity. Being the last speaker of the day, and also looking forward to the greatest event why we are here, giving the awards to all our competitors, and I've listened and I've watched most of them. It's been encouraging. And I just want to give a different twist to my talk, based on the fact that we've had so much information. We can never no longer claim ignorance as far as the impact of how we behave and what we do on climate and the environment. And we can also no longer say we did not know, because there's been so much information, there's so many statistics, there's so many numbers that have been shared. So I think for me, it has come to a point where it is all about exactly, so what? And what does this mean for us now that we know what we know? And the most important thing is, what is the action that needs to be taken and who needs to act? And the timing is when. Who is responsible for what has happened? Relebogile, please confirm if you can see my slides.
Yes, I can see your slide.
Thank you.
You can continue.
So I'm here speaking to you as, a custodian of the climate agenda based on the background on my professional side. But I'm also a woman, a mother, a sister, and a fellow citizen, and somebody who is concerned about the future well-being of our world, particularly our children. You've mentioned Relebogile. I'm a long-distance runner. In my lifetime, I've done over 200 marathons and still counting, old as I am. And those include the ultra marathon, 10 kilometers, 10 of the 56 kilometers. In Cape Town, 10 of the Comrades marathon. This is one of the harshest and ultimate human tests as far as running is concerned. Now you may ask why Sis Khanyi has bothered to do these things. I come from a background of lack, as many of our young people were sharing their stories, particularly Emily earlier on and Akona yesterday, amazing. I come from a situation where I have always been told I cannot have and I cannot do. So the only way that I could really test myself when I was able to have my own mind and make my own decisions was actually run and commit to, is Khanyi capable of doing more than what other people had decided to decide for me. These are the international marathons that I've run, the streets of Paris and running on the Great Wall of China, 42 kilometers. But if there's any lessons in my running career that I took, it was from these 6 marathons, which are called the championship marathons. When we got to New York Marathon, 55,000 runners were in the lineup. Now, please don't look for me in the top 10 or top 3. I never win any marathon. I just run so that Khanyi can prove to herself and those who are interested in challenging themselves that it is doable. So 50,000, 55,000 runners, I was right at the back. And we had to wait for almost 2 to 3 hours in the cold before we could have our share of starting to run, because the elite runners had to run first. If there's any event that showed me the power of mobilizing volunteerism for a common cause, I learned that from the London Marathon. Tokyo, it was exceptional cold, but the Japanese went out of their way to make sure that we were comfortable as athletes, particularly when we had to finish at the end of a very cold day. I was pleased yesterday to listen to the ambassador of Germany, and I want you to give the message to people in Germany that Berlin, for me, is my favorite, because we saw that German precision as far as organizing events are concerned. I was fortunate to run the Boston Marathon just a year after the bombings, some of you would remember. And here a city came together to say, we're not going to be led by fear. Even though there was terrorism, attacking, and instilling fear, people of Boston, together with us, the runners who went to support them, we said, we will rise again together with you. The Chicago Marathon was my last marathon in terms of these championships. And it was in the middle of winter. Guess what? We were all dressed up in all our warm garments, ready for the cold. It was the hottest day in America, particularly in Chicago. And we could not even meet the times that we had actually trained and planned for. So climate change had already started long before some of us had even understood what it would mean in our normal daily lives. So as a custodian of the agenda, we are part and parcel of a journey where we found this earth breathing. Whether we would have been here or not, the planet actually doesn't need us as far as I'm concerned, because it's been here and it can survive. In fact, Mother Earth can decide, and she showed us, Akona mentioned it yesterday, that at the back of COVID-19, it was just a dress rehearsal. But this earth of ours can simply twist around and turn things around. And we've seen the repercussions of what has happened because of climate change. It is now a suffocating earth because of our own input and the role that we unfortunately have played. I won't touch much on this because they have been mentioned, but we are stretching. We have stretched one of the most critical of our planetary boundaries. And also these are the results, particularly in the countries where there is so much need that is required. In fact, it was so sad for me to see some of the research that the COVID-19 masks are already at the bottom of the sea. And I don't remember any species in the sea reporting that they have found some COVID cases. So we are the ones who are actually creating the mess, continuously so. But I think the biggest mess that we are causing, other than trying to and aspiring to get to the 1.5 degrees that has now been confirmed, is the social ills and the social unrest, particularly that we've seen in our country. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to present a message that says enough of what we have done. We're now at the critical point where we have to make the choices. And people who are listening and sitting here, and I can venture in saying you are here because you are part of the converted, you're also looking for answers, and you're also looking for solutions. Otherwise, you would not be sitting for the 2 days. I actually liked what Vusi Tembekwayo said yesterday, that this is the time now we have to ask ourselves different questions. This is the time of inclusivity, but also this is the time where, how do I raise my hand and bring myself to the fore? And as Khanyi, being an adventurer, believing in nature talking to us, I want to share my story of mountaineering. 3 mountains that I have climbed. There's many other peaks that I've summited, but there were key lessons that I learned from these mountains. And this comes from, again, a girl who grew up in Soweto, family of 13. I'm the last born. I was named Khanyi because my mother hoped that through me, there'll be light in the family. And I've always lived on a daily basis, really wanting to live up to my name. This is Peak of Mafadi in South Africa, the highest peak that we have in our country. As you can see, beautiful as she is, standing at the foot of the Drakensberg, we ventured with a group of women to go and climb this mountain. And part of why I climbed the mountains, I raise funds. I'm a foster mother to 13 children, and I support their education, 13 because I come from a family of 13. So I'm still trying to actually reach my mother's record. So I had to switch off my phone. On the book, at the foot of the Mafadi, we learned quickly on this mountain that you start climbing from day one. We were not given an opportunity to acclimatize, to plan whether this is the right thing, whether we have a day to test. The mountain was there. It was rugged, treacherous, as you can see. And day one, it was a serious climb. We had to bring everything that we have as individuals and as a team. By the second day, we reached our summit because it's not a high mountain, no altitude sickness, no major issues, just hard climb that's dependent on how physically strong we are. Well, I don't have a big body, but I have a big heart, and I have a big hunger in terms of how can I pull and push myself to get to the top. Beautiful getting to the summit of this peak at Mafadi. What we did not know, though, was what was waiting in store for us when we had to go down and descend. This was the harshest and the longest day of going down. Took us 19 hours to try to get to the bottom of where we started. Because the climb only was 2 days, it was so quick, the decline was that much more difficult. This is where we find ourselves as far as the agenda of climate change is concerned. We've amassed so much resources. I liked what Emily also shared earlier on, that the ego has made us to accumulate, to consume, to buy more. How many cars can one person have? How many bags can one person have? And I like when she talks about how we can use a circular economy to make sure that we don't waste. We actually use what we have in order to better ourselves. And what a wonderful, inspiring story by a young woman who understands what it means to have the power of financial independence. This is what we learned from Mafadi. You have to get to the point where you take a step back and go down first. And the going down humbles us. We are at the point where Mother Earth is actually unleashing to us, where we have to sit down and listen. Where I'm actually sitting down, I had come to a point where, strong as I am, because I train, I'm an athlete, but all my joints were gone at this point. And I had to use, well, my most valuable assets that any African woman can have, and I sat down. But part of the sitting down is a sign of humility. So mountain climbing teaches us that we have to be humble and we have to listen. In our journey of climate change, this is the time to sit down and listen. What is the instruction? What are the messages? What are the things that we need to do? And how we're going to do better? The next mountain I want to share, part of my lessons, is Mount Kilimanjaro. Free-standing mountain in terms of the world, but the highest mountain in the continent. You can see in the picture, this mountain was once covered in ice everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, until we came, and this is how Mount Kilimanjaro looks today. The future of generations and our children and grandchildren, I'm sorry to say, they may not even see a spark of ice of this mountain because we were there. But yet again, what a better way to learn to deal with nature than learning from nature herself. On the first day at Mount Kilimanjaro, we quickly had to learn that we needed to adjust to the new environment. Forget the big houses, the showers, and everything, and the comfort that you have. You are now on the mountain, and there's limited resources on the mountain. And therefore, you quickly have to learn to do more with less. Emily's message earlier on. And also, you know, Albertus, I've been following you and really hearing how you have been a pioneer as far as the green agenda is concerned. This is where we understand that I don't have to have the plastics, as you were sharing earlier on. I was actually laughing because I have a similar story. I went to my local groceries the other day and I forgot my bags. And the lady at the till offered me the plastics. And I said, no. I said, no, I'm going to give them to you for free. I said, no, child, I'm fine. She said, they are for free. Like, you know, don't you get it? And the lady next to her on the till also just weighed into this conversation. Ma, they are for free. You know, it just struck me that although the shops are doing their best, yes, our governments, everybody's doing their best, but we seem to have forgotten to take everybody along with us why we are doing the things that we are doing. And because we are not taking and co-creating and journeying together, as Vusi was saying, it's about inclusivity this time around. We have forgotten the key aspect of why we actually do not need plastic. And I do understand that there are opportunities where you can build an economy and business opportunities, but the basic principle of why all of us need to be aware of the impact that the plastic has on the environment is not everywhere. And that was, for me, the saddest part of what I got from my interaction with the shop at that particular time. The last picture where it is dark, that was our first night, sleeping under the stars, and actually it is that dark on the mountain. But we also learned very quickly that how much do we miss out by having too much? This guy was very high up there, but because it was clear of pollution, we could actually see. So there's a lesson in how we should do more with little. The mountain is an equalizer. Fit as I am, strong as I am, we line ourselves up in terms of who is stronger on the day. But when you look in these pictures, we are always traveling on the edge. It is rugged, it is rough. Mount Kilimanjaro is like a typical African girl where she says, I will show you, because you've come to my territory, then I'll show you who I am. And very quickly, we're all equal. If you look at the last picture, we all suffered mountain sickness. We're all exhausted. It did not matter who's an athlete, who's a smoker, who's a drinker, who is a vegetarian, who has money, and who has the best position. We're all equal in front of Kilimanjaro. This is a point where we're finding ourselves, that we're all breathing the same air. We all are suffering the same illnesses caused by our own behavior. And it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter the environment where you come from. We are all part and parcel of same Mother Earth. And during the harshest, difficult times of lockdown, she showed us that everybody can sit down at the same time, and the money and the resources and everything that everybody thought they had did not serve them at the time. So it is important that we need to be equal when we face the agenda and the issues of how we bring ourselves in dealing with climate change. This was the night when we were actually now planning for our summit. In the first picture, I'm actually the person sitting down because I was severely cold. Part of why I'm doing mountaineering is to deal with my fear of the cold. I mean, being Black, raised up by grandmothers, the first thing when there's 1 or 2 clouds, you are rounded up with all kinds of blankets. Really, I'm sure you will know that, Vaseline and everything you covered. So I've never been cold in my life. And I had to go through and take the challenge that I will face the cold. And then the summit night when it mattered most, I couldn't. But look at my team. These are people, my fellow climbers. They would not let me go back, and they would not let me not continue on the summit. I like what Han kept talking about this morning, the ambassador, when he was talking about partnerships and teamwork, that is going to take partnerships for us to tackle the issues of climate change. You learn that lesson even much more quicker when you are on the mountain. On the second picture, you can see somebody has got his hand on my back because I was struggling. And I thought he was pushing me and giving me the energy to continue. And during this climb, I said to him, you know, I really do appreciate you pushing me. I don't think I can make it without your hand on my back. My friend said, no, Khanyi, I'm not pushing you. I'm actually very cold. I'm warming myself using your own body. So whilst I thought I was getting something from him, he was getting something from me. Quickly on the mountain, you understand. There are no spectators. There's nobody standing on the side and clapping hands to say, oh, well done. You have to pull yourself once you make sure that those in front of you are also being pushed by you, and those behind you, they actually follow. This was our summit on this particular mountain, Kilimanjaro. It was a shared victory. But what we did first, because of how hard and how harsh it has been for us, we had to cuddle together and get together as a team and celebrate the journey of what it took us to get to the top. The moment that we spent on the top was 10, 15 minutes quickly, get off the mountain, because you can't stay that long anyway. So there was not even enough time to celebrate. We learned quickly on mountaineering that it's not about celebrating the particular moment, because things change. It's about celebrating what it took for us to get there, whilst quickly planning which other mountain are we going to climb and what is it that's going to take. This is where we find ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, where we now have billions of money and pledges. And I was very happy to hear how much of the pledges have been put. Roll yesterday did share 700,000 euros for the next year. And then the doctor came and said 500 billion US dollars for the next 5 years. So we can never say there are no resources, there's enough money in this world to change the landscape. And there's enough going around for everybody to have a share in terms of what it is that needs to be done. Again, I loved how Vusi was talking about the economy versus the ecology, how people who understand the stories and the issues about money, that yes, it makes things go and makes the world go around, but what's the point of having all these billions if at the end of the day, 26 years later of COP, we're still at the foot of the mountain? I want to share the last mountain, which is Mount Elbrus, the highest in Europe, that we ventured to climb. The first lesson on this mountain was that whilst there was the big mountain we were going to climb, Mount Elbrus is surrounded by 100, literally 100 other mountains around here in Georgia, around Russia. And before we could actually even see where we're going to start our climb, we had to go through the treacherous and the most challenging and difficult route on a daily basis, one summit after the other. So the last thing we need and want as far as dealing with climate change is to think that now that we have the money, now we have the pledges, now we have all this communication, all we need to do is just to get to the top, because the top may not be that clear to us at the moment. I don't even think we understand, and Akona again put it very well, that, you know, the greatest gift, harsh and bad as it was, the experience of COVID-19, but it was almost like a dress rehearsal. COVID-19 is simply saying to us, look what could actually happen. So the lesson from the mountaineering is that you may think this is the one big mountain you're going to climb. Understand that there are many others that we may have to go through before we get to the top. The next big thing on this mountain, because Elbrus is a technical mountain, unlike Mafadi, unlike Kilimanjaro, it is glacier, it is ice, and it is snowing on a daily basis. How do you gear yourself up differently for the task ahead? And I just want to share quickly, I hope you can see this. This is the shoe, 5 kgs. There's another boot inside that I actually had to wear for Mount Elbrus. Compared to, this is the shoe I used to climb, I mean, it's so light to climb Kilimanjaro. It was just your normal hiking boot, just making sure that you don't have frostbite, it is not difficult, and you can climb. Mafadi, this is actually the hiking shoe that I actually used to get to the top of Mafadi. But this mountain, said, I'm not Kilimanjaro. You're going to have to gear up differently. And all the gear that you can see in these pictures are heavy stuff that you have to carry yourself. So one of the biggest decisions when you get to a mountain like Mount Elbrus is what it is that you put in your bag. And we are taught in mountaineering that you have to put and choose stuff that is going to go into your bag that your life will depend upon. Emily did mention earlier her life story and how they had to live as a babies in order to feed themselves with the little that they had. And I can venture to say when she got to Russia, it was all about the basic necessities of what is it that she needed to have. She started the business. I'd like to understand on the basis of, with this crisis, what is it that we actually need without all the extras that's going to carry us to the next level, particularly as business people, as she was sharing. On a daily basis, on the third day of this mountain, you always see the top of Mount Elbrus. Unlike Kilimanjaro, you don't even see where the top is because it is just so rough. I mean, this is Africa. But in Europe, I suppose Europeans, they always plan their things differently, even the mountain. Every day we could see the summit. But you don't just get to the bottom of the mountain and look at the summit and then start running and going straight and think you're just going to get to the top. There's a concept called pole pole, slowly, slowly, and you zigzag as you go around the mountain whilst continuously acclimatizing and going up. It's also about continuously being aware, the vision, the summit, how high it is, how scary it looks, and what it is that's going to take for us to get there. It's about being aligned. You can see we are standing in the line. Daily, we would climb to a certain level, acclimatize, and go back, sleep at the lower level. The following day, we'll go to a higher level, acclimatize, and go back and recoup before we can venture on the following day. That is the journey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take with this climate change. And I'd like to believe, because we have rushed with solutions, we have rushed in our anger, in our panicking. We want to get to the solution today. I was listening to the radio the other day. The journalist was forcing the person that he was interviewing that now there is money. What are we going to do with this money? Give me the dates by when. And I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again on a panic. And this is the time where, as a world, I am hoping would have learned that pacing is very important. Unlike in running, you've seen in my pictures, I'm always happy running, taking pictures. On this Mount Elbrus in particular, pacing meant pain on a daily basis, but with the vision. At the same time, Mother Earth shows us that she can change. She is actually more in control than we think she is. This was on the same day in the morning where it was bright, sunlight, beautiful. Within seconds and minutes, we were in the thick of the snowstorm. That's me in the picture there. I got lost because my team moved ahead, thinking that because I'm stronger physically, I was going to catch up much more quicker. And I couldn't because I got confused in the midst of the cloud. But I had to remember what is the instruction. Don't panic, no fear. And understanding that when you find yourself in that space where it is dark, how are you going to get yourself out of there? By simply following the instructions. How are we going to get ourselves out of the crisis and the mess we have created that has resulted in climate change? Is going to take us remembering what are the instructions. And all the speeches and all the information that has been shared would be completely useless if we don't take one or two things out of the 2 days and the 2 weeks, and in fact, the last 26 years. This is the point where we are now learning how to plan for the actual summit, the drill. This was a different mountain, as I have been mentioning. Kilimanjaro, there's no snow, there's no ice. So you just climb continuously one day to the next and to the next day. But here, the snow, the ground changes. At the bottom of the mountain, it's much more softer. As you go to the middle of the mountain, it becomes harder. As you go towards the summit, it's hard rock. This is where you have to learn to use the different muscles. In fact, when you climb, you apply different muscles, unlike when you are running or swimming. So the concept here is, firstly, we use a rope to harness against each other as fellow climbers, because the chances of one of us falling and slipping off the mountains are always very high. Kilimanjaro is an example, 10 people die in every climbing season. On this mountain, many people have lost their lives. So in order to prevent people from falling off the mountain, you are harnessed against each other as a team, and you are taught to use an ice axe. That's like the picture where I'm actually on the ground on the ice. I'm being taught to throw myself onto the snow, dig using the ice axe, make sure that I am firmly on the ground. I'm not going to move, so that my fellow climber, when they are tumbling down, roped against me, I can arrest their fall and save them from being off the mountain. Remembering, by the way, that I'm not only saving them, I'm also saving myself, because I'm tied to them through this rope. Whilst it is a great thing to hear how Europe is putting the money for Africa, I actually liked what Ambassador Raul said yesterday. Africa needs Europe, and Europe cannot prosper without Africa. I think this is the time where Akona was challenging us, saying, are we still negotiating? Are we having the right people sitting around the table? Why are young people not there? Because it's not only going to take just a few people making the decision, but if you understand that the partnership this time around is that important and that intricate, and that we are roped together, and how prepared are we as the countries, particularly the countries that have resources, to throw ourselves on the ground and prevent those who do not have falling off the mountain. When Akona told the story of her mother and her indigenous ways of trying to look after herself, you shared yesterday also how your mother and your grandmother, and I mean, I think in the Black communities, we all have the same stories of how the basic things have carried the generations where we're coming from. But now that we've got resources, we're sitting where we are sitting, we have forgotten what it means to dig and make sure that we are all still on the mountain, nobody's falling. This was the greatest moment of my climb at Mount Elbrus. This is the summit morning, 2 a.m. in the morning, having to go out of the cabin, minus 24 degrees, Khanyi being so scared of the cold, and I had to be out there. Once I was in doubt, not sure whether this is what I want to do, my instructor, my coach came to me and said, Khanyi, you came here to overcome your fear of the cold. This is your moment now. And also you have your children dependent on you to raise money for their education. You can't go back now. And this is where the concept of being comfortable in uncomfortable situations began to make sense. We are in very uncomfortable situations at the moment because of climate change. One moment, I mean, I'm just so worried that I'm hoping nothing happens with this bandwidth, because any moment the electricity can go. Any moment it becomes cold. The other day in the Free State, there was hailstorm with ice literally breaking people's windows and roofs. So meaning the time has come for us to be tested. This was the final push to the end of our summit. If you look at these pictures, you can see that we are on the edge. This is where it is called the knife edge on the mountain. That's me in blue leading, because on this particular morning, I was the strongest. And I was the strongest against many people behind me who are seasoned climbers, strong men. But because of how the mountain deals with us differently. I was in a position where everybody was dependent on me at this particular moment. And there was no way I had any opportunity to change my mind, because where do you step? Anyway, when you are on the edge. We are on the edge as the whole world and the globe. Yesterday, I was listening to people saying, are we having the right leaders? Do we have the right people? Do they know what they're doing? The young lady this morning who was saying she's angry because of what the adults have done in front of her, and Emily saying, actually, the fact that she's angry simply means she's already leading. So there are points that we can take from the mountain that teaches us that there comes a moment where there is no choice, that you can only move forward and go up. Because if you don't do that, can you imagine everybody behind me being stopped from actually achieving their summit? Because Khanyi decided, I'm cold or I'm tired. We can't afford to do that now. This was our summit at Mount Elbrus, the last few steps. Under normal circumstances, a kilometer or run a kilometer in 5 or 6 minutes. But on Mount Elbrus, it took us 2 hours just to negotiate a kilometer to get to the top. And the biggest lesson here was when we got to the top, the first thing we did was to look back and pull our fellow climbers who were struggling. Because what is the whole issue of summiting on your own? Mountaineering is not about a competition who gets the first, who looks better than the other. The issues of dealing with climate change it's not about competition. It's not about who sounds better, who has better, who's going to get there first. It's how we pull together as a team in unison, in understanding what are the critical things that we would need to all do at an individual level first, and as a collective to summit this mountain. We all have a choice, ladies and gentlemen. We can continue to talk. We can continue to talk about the statistics. We can continue about scaring each other or pointing fingers or blaming each other, or we can turn a new leaf, learning from Mother Nature herself. Number 1, prepare. Make sure that you've got the right kit. Understand that it's going to take hard work. Again, speaker after speaker spoke about hard work, but it's the pacing. How do we pace ourselves? And once we get to the point where we are all aligned and we understand, at what point are we humble enough to say, we actually don't know the answers? We actually don't know what's coming. And therefore we need a new way of thinking if we're going to tackle the issues of climate change. I like what Barack Obama says. You know, when people are asking who's the leaders, do we have the right leaders? He's challenging us in saying that we are the people that we are waiting for. Change is not going to come when we are waiting for somebody or for some time. It will only come when we put ourselves in the forefront. Nelson Mandela talks about change coming when we put ourselves there with an understanding that it's in our hands. Peter Drucker also talks about change, saying, you know, it's illogical to try and solve the issues of today with the same thinking that we had yesterday. I'm hoping that my mountaineering journey talks to this point even more. You have to change the shoes. This is time to change a different shoe. This is a time to gear up differently. This is a time to look around us, who is with us. And this is the time not to be fearful about the task ahead. If we are that hungry enough to tackle the issues of mountaineering, of climate change, we learn from mountaineering that if you want it, you have to fight for it. I grew up with that hunger as a young girl. And I can tell a story today that in fact, if you had asked me growing up in Soweto with no father, with no resources, I had to take myself to school, but I had to dream and see myself. In fact, my friends used to laugh at me because I used to tell them when I was 10, 11, that one day I'm going to be on the stage and people are going to be listening to my story, and they laughed. And here I am today. So I'm hoping that we do understand that the issues of climate change are bigger than our individual interests, but are also issues that are not waiting for anybody else. We are here. We are the ones who need to do the change. Thank you very much.
Yo, Khanyi, so inspiring. Some of us thought we're here to learn about climate change alone, but we're learning about resilience. I still am just in absolute awe of what you've been able to achieve. It's also a little bit sad, you know, where you share about what's happened to the mountains, and that's all of our own doing. And I do hope, and that is the big hope, that the future generations are able to enjoy the wonderful things that we have right now that are definitely in our power to ensure remain as beautiful, as amazing, as intact as possible. We would love for as many of you as possible to put your questions out. Albertus, I know you got some thoughts.
Yeah, wow, man. Can you, first of all, you are so living up to your name. It was such an incredible journey to go on with you. And as you said, we can't claim ignorance anymore. There are no spectators. The time for talk is over. It's time to act. And I just love how you just act. You just embrace life, not afraid of anything, facing any mountain, and always asking, what is the next one? Fostering 13 children. Wow. And thank you for sharing your life lessons with us. And as you said, we are the people that we are waiting for.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there's so many comments. If you didn't get an opportunity to see them, Khanyi, inspiring story. Well said, I'm converted. We've got, that's the reality with grannies, more layers, definitely is. But everybody is just raving about your story and how wonderful it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a question from Diane saying, I agree and love what you say about being humble, but how do we teach that to the self-obsessed selfie generation who see nature as a backdrop for an Instagram feed?
In fact, you know, as Emily was also sharing, that I'm actually seeing more and more of young people getting involved in the agenda of climate change. In fact, a study conducted recently by the Betha Center at UCT was focusing at looking at the mental health of young people. Can you believe that what's beginning to top the issues that worrying young people is actually climate change? And what Emily also was sharing, I really concur, is that more and more young people are beginning to make different choices where they're not buying cars. In fact, they're even beginning to choose companies that they want to work for on the basis of what is the company doing as far as climate change is concerned. So when it comes to the ego and the non-caring attitude, it's going to take other young people to speak the language. Because it's one thing for Mama Khanyi, as old as I am, you know, it doesn't matter what I say to my children, I'm their mother. So whatever I say doesn't make sense. They don't believe it unless the teacher says it. But I'm also finding that the young people like Akona today, like MLA, they are the ones who are now the ambassadors, and they are the ones who are the warriors of this message. All we can do, our generation, the generation that has messed up, is to give them the respect and the time and the seat at the table to actually drive the agenda. I think it's particularly in South Africa, we all know our history, that the narrative and the future of this country changed because of young people, because of how brave they were in 1976. This is what's going to take today for young people to also be brave as far as this agenda is concerned. Young people also, in terms of their egos, is when we are coordinated and congruent in our message, that whatever product, companies, what language are they sending, what messages are they sending? In fact, we need to hold those accountable. What are they selling and how are they positioning what they sell? The education is very important. Again, just did not want to repeat what Akona was saying, practical steps. Young people need to understand how to make choices differently because it is their future that's being eroded. We are already dinosaurs, some of us. So really, it's really up to them to wake up.
Yeah. Khanyi, we've got from Richard saying, please tell us about your business life, as well as I understand you work in sustainability. What have you learned from the business world? Have perspectives changed in the business world towards climate change?
You know, Richard, you actually remind me, the other day I was invited to be part of a conference where the discussion was around shared value, environmental, social governance issues, sustainable development goals on all these big agendas. So there were only 30 of us. I cracked the invite physically because I was seen as a VIP. So I was like, yay, that's another medal for me. At the end of the conference, the main organizer said to me, you know, Khanyi, I'm so sad that we only have 30 people. Normally, there would be like 300 people from around the world or 500 coming here for this conference. And I said, oh my goodness, how we are missing the opportunity yet again to understand that here the people are driving the agenda, the custodian who is bringing everybody around the world to discuss the issues around the saving a better world for our future generation. She's worried about losing the fact that there are no people around here. So Richard, business is very slow. We are not there yet. I'm part of the Institute of Directors in South Africa, and I'm a member where we're driving the social and environmental committee issues. We conducted the research recently to look at how organizations have embraced the agenda of climate change. And I'm sad to say in the top 10 of what the boards of corporates are focusing on, the environmental factors is at the bottom. So it simply means, that's why I was saying, just the talking and sharing the information is no longer enough. Climate change, environmental factors is a business issue. And I think our businesses, yes, there's a lot of progress that's been made, but as soon as there's a little cough in the economy, as soon as there is something that says, well, you know, the finances are good, the profitability is going to be impacted negatively, the first thing that gets scraped off is these agendas that are not seen to be profit making. So there's still a long way to go. And that's why for me, it's about that pacing, that vision that everybody needs to be aligned, that we can't rush and have a plan in how we're going to deliver when we have not taken everybody along with us. I am hoping that through engagements such as this, as we continuously ask the right questions, like our little Akona yesterday, are we having the right leadership? Are they doing the right things? Business carries the purse, Vusi did say. And I was encouraged to hear somebody like him, who's also in the forefront of driving the economy, committing to the fact that when he thought it does not belong in this agenda, he now understands that he does. So I'm hoping it's through champions and people who are brave, who have the voice and the platform such as this, who will continue to drive that agenda. My journey in business has not been an easy one because I'm driven by social impact, but I have always been able to use the positions that have been given to me to create the impact. I'm an architect by profession, and I use my architecture to drive the language that says, how do we solve the issues of housing in this country, particularly for those who do not have? And I was part of the team that came up with the solutions on the housing fund that's going to focus on those who do not have. I've also been part of the construction industry, the broader agenda around you cannot have prosperity in any country when there is no dignity, particularly to people who do not have. So how do we begin to create communities where people can live and thrive? And every time when I sit in front of any board, there's always, oh my goodness, there comes Khanyi with her social impact agenda. What are we going to do with her? But I've learned throughout my whole life, I don't know how to say no, and I don't know how to give up. And I will continue to push these agendas until I am able to say, it is done.
Yeah, and I see some other people also made a comment like that, but I also want to say I'm on your team. I'm with you. Marile Bogile, anything else?
There was another question as a follow-up, as in they are stuck on the 10 comrades. What got you started in running? What got you addicted?
You know, they say it takes a little bit of being brave, but you have to lose some brain cells, because if you have all your brain cells, there is no way you can start Comrades. Comrades is not about the day itself, it's about the preparation. Whether it rains, whether it's cold, whether everybody in the house is sleeping, you commit to waking up in the morning and train. And yes, actually, I use Comrades to overcome some of my own personal challenges in life. I've mentioned I come from a very difficult background where we never had the support from our father, but also it was a very abusive upbringing that I was exposed to as a child and as a young person. And I used Comrades Marathon to run all my troubles and to run all the issues that I was facing by overcoming one marathon after another. So I'm able to sit and look back at my tormentors today and actually see where they are and where I am. And you know, a lot of us remember what the teacher said at school or that neighbor said at you. I had a neighbor in our streets in Soweto who said to my mother, because my mother was very poor, raising all of us, and she had gone to borrow whether it was bread or milk, I can't remember, I was very young. And this gentleman said to my mother, please never ever come back again, you are a shame to our community. And I remember making a commitment that one day this guy is going to read about me and my mother and we would be better. So I'm always driven by how Khanyi can prove to herself and those who are interested to see and learn from her journey, how things can be done. So completing 10 Comrades Marathon was a mission of mine to simply say, nobody should say to me, I can't do anything. Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, there's another question that's come through from Thrishni. What are a few steps that business leaders can take today, do you think, to move in the right direction?
The first step they need to take, firstly, is the self-commitment. Understand that when you wake up in the morning and go to work, you're not the CEO of that particular organization alone. You wake up in the morning, you understand that the decision that you're going to make, the strategy that you're going to be developing, the team that you're going to be driving has to be driven from the common personal commitment and understand. It starts with you as a leader. Secondly, there is no agenda that will succeed in business if there's no measurement and if there's no impact. So the second thing I think business leaders need to put the agenda in the forefront of the business strategy and put measurements. How do we measure ourselves as a company in how we're going to be contributing positively to this agenda? Do we have the right resources? Do we have the right metrics? And if we measure ourselves and put the targets and we look at the scorecard, what are the repercussions if we have not met those commitments that we have made as a business? The language of business is all about, if it's not measured, it's not going to be done. And I think the agendas such as climate change, shared value, and everything that deals with societal impact, because it's not at the core of the business strategy, is always something that we need to do when we have to do it, when we feel guilty. The business leaders need to put it first as part and parcel of the overall strategy. And then I think the last thing the leaders can do today is to look around themselves and see who else can be part of this journey. I think organizations, it becomes daunting for them to even know, where do I start? Because the issues are just so big. Where do we start with? I mean, the social unrest that we saw in our country, which one company can deal with that? You know, earlier on, I was listening to Minister Cele talking about giving us an update about the crime in this country and the statistics. And I'm like, who's going to even start dealing with this? So sometimes it becomes too daunting. And I think what business leaders can do, some of the agendas are not about competing against each other. There's a time where business needs to come together as one voice and solving the social ills for the sake of business itself being able to survive and sustain itself. I believe in the concept of shared value. Shared value says you don't give for the sake of giving. This is not just corporate social investment because you do so that you feel good and brush your ego and then you go to bed and then you take your children to holiday in December because you've got the bonus. Shared value says, yes, it is good for business to make profit, but at the back of contributing positively to the society. And there are few examples of organizations in South Africa that are doing that very well. There's a health organization as an example where you are encouraged to take care of your health. You get incentivized for taking care of your health. And now you have more customers because they see exactly where you are taking them. But because they're much more healthier now, they're not eroding from the profitability of the organization. So I think for me, those are three big things, because some of these issues about leadership, it's your first as a person. Secondly, measure, commit. And thirdly, collaboration and partnerships. And I liked what the ambassador this morning was emphasizing around partnerships.
Wonderful, Khanyi. Thank you so much once again. And I'm sure, like me, you're also very curious to see who of our finalists who have been pitching their projects have won a trip to Europe. And I think you will also agree that each one of them are running a very important marathon and climbing very high mountains